Sounding taps is not the only thing a military bugler does, but it's the most important thing that we do. Every time we sound taps, we want to make it special. We want to make sure that it's perfect. My name is Master Sergeant Yari Villanueva. I'm a musician with the United States Air Force Band, and part of my duties is to sound taps at Arlington National Cemetery. I started playing trumpet when I was in elementary school. When I had looked into a military career, I found that the premier bands were located in Washington, D.C., and they have the cream of musicians. The audition is as tough as any orchestral audition that you would want to take in any one of the major orchestras. Dozens of applicants will show up, and so you have to go up against really fine players, and once you're accepted as a musician, then you join that particular branch of service. For me, it required, after winning the audition, for me to go to Lackland Air Force Base for 6 weeks, where I underwent Air Force basic training. A military band exists for many reasons. My particular band, the Ceremonial Brass, is responsible for the military end of the musical duties.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Laura Bush.
The change of command ceremonies, the full honor arrivals at the White House and the Pentagon and at Andrews Air Force Base.
Good morning. Laura and I are honored to welcome back to the White House Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
All the inaugurations. I've actually played for 5 inaugural parades, and I've played at White House arrivals for the Prime Minister of Japan and also the Queen of England, and to be able to see them up close and personal, it's a thrill.
Mr. President, thank you for your warm words. This is my 5th visit to the United States.
Oh!
And I believe
Hold up! Oh!
Our number one mission is to provide musical honors for those who served and who are being buried at Arlington National Cemetery. We're standing in front of McClellan Gate, which was, if not the original, one of the first entrances to Arlington National Cemetery when this was built. We have the Honor Guard and members from the United States Air Force Band. We're looking at a caisson being pulled by 6 white-matched horses. The troops are now formed up and ready to actually march on the procession. The band leads the way, followed by the troops, then the caisson, and the chaplain follows right behind, and then all the family members. procession is now at attention, and they are taking the remains off the caisson, and they're taking it up to the area of the columbarium where they hold the services. The band is playing Going Home. It's an arrangement that I wrote. Once the service is complete, you'll hear the firing party fire 3 volleys, and then you'll hear taps being sounded. After taps is sounded, the band will play the Air Force hymn as the honor guard folds the flag. Taps is a solo bugle call. It's performed by one person. Even though it's 24 easy notes to play, it's actually the toughest set of notes that you can perform, because a lot of times you're performing them in the most adverse weather conditions, and it's usually done at part of the ceremony where everything comes to a halt and the entire attention turns to the musician who's sounding the call. The melody of taps, of course, is haunting, and every time anyone hears it, the association, of course, is with funerals. But it's also a call that's sounded every night at military bases around the world. And when it's sounded at a military base, it takes on a completely different meaning, because the call in its original form is one that signals the end of the day, that it's time for lights out, time to go to sleep. During the Civil War, soldiers became accustomed to hearing the call being sounded at night, and they would know that if the bugler would be sounding the call, everything would be safe and secure for an evening, and that there was nothing to worry about. You may not know it, but you hear bugle calls all the time. For example, there was, of course, the call reveille. Another call that you probably hear quite a bit is every Kentucky Derby and Preakness. Now that call originally is called first call. It has nothing to do with horse racing. It is an actual call that tells you that something's about to happen. It's a first call. It means to get ready. Now on the battlefield, calls were used for troops to go forward, to commence fire, and of course to cease fire.
Cardinal Cushing, an old family friend, blesses the mortal remains of John F. Kennedy. From St. Matthews, the cortege is to cross the Potomac to the Cemetery of Heroes, Arlington.
Probably the most heard sounding of taps that took place was in November of 1963 at the Kennedy funeral. Keith Clark, who was the bugler with the Army band, and he was assigned the chore of sounding taps at the Kennedy funeral. He went down to Arlington early in the morning, and because of a mix-up in times, found out that he had missed the rehearsal. He was put into position about 3 hours before the funeral took place, and it was cold that day, and he didn't have much of a chance to warm up. And of course, when the big moment came, he started to call wonderfully, but on the 6th note, he cracked. It became part of our American culture, that cracked note. Everyone thought that the bugler did it on purpose and that he was trying to show emotion, when in reality, he just missed the note. Even though we look on that note as a broken note, I like to compare it with the crack in the Liberty Bell. It's something that's part of our American culture. It's always going to be there. And we know with the recordings that still exist today that that note's going to live with us.
Thus, the American people have buried their beloved leader.
The call of taps it's a way of thanking that veteran for their service. It's a special way for the military to say thank you for a job well done. It's a great thing to do, and a great opportunity exists for those who would like to do this service. For young players who would like to serve their country or do something in return, my suggestion would be to find a VFW group, an American Legion chapter, or even a military reserve company that would like to have the services of a live musician. Out in the field, there's nothing like the sound of a live musician sounding taps at a funeral. It's, to me, a great honor to be able to do this and to be able to represent not only the Air Force, but the entire military.